Back in 2020, when HBO and Druckmann announced that a live-action adaptation of the popular video game franchise, The Last of Us, was officially in the works, a good amount of the internet immediately began to think, will this road also lead to Abby? But in all seriousness, the majority of us figured that even in the modern era of messing up adaptations, the story and characters of The Last of Us translate so well that there can't possibly be a way that they could screw it up. Right?
Don't give me hope.
The Last of Us starts off in 2003 and introduces us to Joel Miller, played by the ever-dynamic Pedro Pascal, a blue-collar worker and single parent to his daughter Sarah. Despite mom being out of the picture, for reasons we never learn, the pair have a close relationship and one that the writers attempt to make play off each other. But all is not well, as in this same episode we learn that America, as 2003 knows it, is about to collapse with the breakout of the fungus apocalypse, or fung-pocalypse as I like to say. And everyone, as they know it, is turning into weird zombie-like beings controlled by cordyceps. In their attempt to escape, along with Joel's brother Tommy, Sarah ends up getting shot by a young soldier tragically. Fast forward 20 years and a harder-looking Joel is working in a somewhat totalitarian society and encounters Ellie, a 14-year-old girl played by Bella Ramsey, who he's asked to escort across the country to Boston in an attempt to literally save the world. This basically sums up the plot and introduction to our main characters, Joel and Ellie. The Last of Us the game was memorable to gamers for its beautiful exploration of the complex father-daughter relationship that blooms unintentionally between Joel and Ellie as they endure and survive in the mushroom-infested world around them. Hell, it was so memorable that they remastered it twice in less than a decade. Through some extraneous missions, scavenger hunts, and life-or-death situations, the pair come to realize that they fulfill parts of each other they didn't know were missing. Joel, his ability to fulfill his obligation as a father, which was cut short by Sarah's tragic death, and Ellie finally having someone who genuinely cared for her well-being, as well as providing her with the type of strong parental role model she desperately needed and never had. HBO's adaptation attempts to mimic this relationship, but in the most half-assed way possible. In moments that should have had a stronger impact, the TV show rushes through instead in order to meet a shock value quota, so that audiences will stick around immediately, but probably not through to a second season. The first 2 episodes of the series establish the world fairly well, including a few trickles of nuances that the game didn't have, like the cordyceps being able to connect through a fungal network much like actual fungus do in the real world. Hey, that's actually a really cool idea. It's a shame they used it for 1 episode and never visited it again, in one of many plot conveniences that plague this show. Despite small details like this, HBO seemed to be on a roll. And then episode 3 happened. Was episode 3 bad? Not really. It had some inconsistencies that didn't make sense to the characters, but it wasn't bad. Did we care that it was a homosexual couple? Nah, not really. Did the hour-and-a-half flashback episode following the love story of 2 never-to-be-seen-again characters progress the plot at all? Fuck no!
Are you serious?
Episode 3 marks where HBO and Cuckman lose the mark completely, as it becomes overwhelmingly apparent from here on out that the showrunners have absolutely no idea what they're doing. After episode 3, we're gifted with another 1.5 episodes worth of flashbacks that check a bunch of boxes but offer no significance to the journey our protagonists are on. In fact, the plot becomes so obscure and awkwardly paced that you wouldn't catch on to the fact that Joel and Ellie have spent the better part of 5 months together on the road by the time the 9-episode season ends. Instead of choosing to develop the relationship between these 2 characters in a way that actually makes your audience give 2 farts, shock value takes the front and center for each episode of this show. Alternatively, the game graced us with factions, settlements, and minor characters that were introduced and adequately explored before being built up enough to leave a lasting impact on Joel and Ellie as they continued east. Furthermore, each interaction developed their relationship further, having the duo recognize that they're more alike than they realize, and that there's a deep-seated love in there as they shoot, smash, and fight their way through various adversaries. The television adaptation adopts all those game nuances in shallow, ingenuine ways. And while we do witness Joel and Ellie encounter infected, weird, grapey cult leaders and militia factions, the impact of all of those are never felt episode over episode. Well, Vex, what the hell do you mean?
What the hell are you talking about?
Remember The Walking Dead? hold on, let me rephrase. Remember the first 3-ish seasons of The Walking Dead? Every time Rick Grimes, the protagonist, would encounter something or someone that affected him or the group, he held on to that and it would influence the decisions he made as the show progressed. He went from a confused, albeit soft man to someone so hardened that he began to lose his moral compass. Carol did the same. After the loss of Sophia, her daughter, and the abrupt realization that her meek demeanor offered her no survival advantages, she buffed up and became one of the series' most loved and badass characters. HBO's The Last of Us paints our protagonists as automatic badasses, erasing what backstory we could have seen that would have better shaped our protagonists and would have helped us connect to them on a far deeper level than just, well, what happens next? Every dive into either Ellie or Joel's history ends extremely superficially. While Joel's helps paint at face value a better reason why he became a harder person, Ellie's backstory doesn't explain how she jumped from what we see as a troubled outcast to a kid who likes to poke people in the forehead with knives to a kid who suddenly can't deal with trauma, despite the several instances of trauma we see her directly experience throughout the series, by the way. Between episodes 5 and 6, we learn that Joel and Ellie had been on the road for 3 months, and in that time, their relationship hadn't evolved, at all. She didn't explain how the events of episode 5 affected her until conveniently 3 months later in episode 6. They don't bond over those they lost on their journey together, nor bother to learn about each other. To be blunt, we don't know why these two characters would still bother giving a flying fart about each other. It's only over the course of the final 2 episodes of the season where we get a glimpse of it, and it's so absolutely rushed that we, as the viewer, are hit with an abrupt whiplash from it. And I say that not just as someone familiar with the game, but as someone who appreciates television that does more than just score A+s on visuals. As the season draws to a close, Joel ends up suffering from a fatal stabbing, which should have helped both realize that they should probably accept that they have a familial fondness for each other. But instead, it divulges into Ellie weeping about how she can't do this alone, how she can't survive on her own, how Joel can't die on her because she would die. Again, would you buy that these characters spent 3 months, day and night, alone, on the road together, with everything they've experienced, to act like this? In the time that we got useless flashback episodes were missed opportunities to build up our protagonists in a way that the video game medium was unable to. There were times in between the foes they encountered, and there were many, that we as the viewer could have learned more about the world of The Last of Us. Like, why did Joel become an alluded to militiaman? Why did people become the way they did? Why did certain cordyceps evolve in ways that others didn't? Yeah, that last point, we learned that there are varieties, but aren't given much of a reason as to why, and see clickers so infrequently that you forget they're a threat in a zombie apocalypse show. And so do Joel and Ellie, it seems. The season finale adds even further credence to all this, giving Joel legitimately 3 character 180s, and introducing us to a meek Ellie that is completely uncharacteristic of the girl we saw for an entire season prior. Then we have Druck the Cuck talking non-stop about how the next season will or won't follow the games, will or won't adapt characters in new ways, and will maybe give us more of the fun guys. All of which don't offer a taste of what to expect, but that nobody has a clear vision of what they want to do with this IP. HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us was really disappointing. Not for what the mainstream critics allege, but instead for its shallow exploration of an IP that deserved better, especially when it was given to a network known for its exquisite storytelling and character studies. Anyways, that's all I have to say on it. Thanks for stopping by and stay frosty, friends.